A sleek black sedan was stranded on the suburban freeway shoulder. The midday sun was relentless, radiating off the asphalt. David Parker, 42, a single father, slowed his battered pickup truck. CEO Emma Lawson, impeccably suited and late for a crucial meeting, was frantically on the phone, visibly frustrated by her sudden loss of control. David killed his engine and stepped out, asking, "Need a hand?" Emma, caught off guard by the non-intrusive kindness, nodded. As his son Leo watched him work, she studied his focused, worn hands. Something felt deeply and eerily familiar. David, concentrating on the faulty engine, didn't recognize her at all. David Parker was a man defined by the quiet rhythm of necessity. At 42, his life was a tapestry woven of routine and resilience. His current profession was mobile mechanic and roadside troubleshooter. He drove his old, reliable Ford F-150, a rolling workshop, down endless stretches of highway, fixing the mechanical failures others abandoned. This was a far cry from his past. David had once been a brilliant high-performance automotive engineer, designing custom engines for elite racing teams. That life of speed, ambition, and high-octane excitement had ended abruptly 7 years ago, swallowed by the sudden death of his wife. She was a journalist, covering a major automotive expose, and the accident was a horrific random fate that shattered David's world. The loss had extinguished the competitive fire that once drove him. The complex world of elite racing, where every fractional advantage was pursued regardless of cost or consequence, suddenly felt hollow and meaningless. He abandoned the lucrative, high-pressure career, seeking a quieter existence where his focus could be singular and absolute. Raising Leo. He had once chased horsepower. Now he only chased simple mechanical stability and the steady rhythm of fatherhood. Now the garage was his pickup bed, the racetrack was the suburban roadside, and his most important assistant was his 9-year-old son, who was used to doing homework next to the rhythmic clink of wrenches. This deliberate choice to step away from glory was his greatest sacrifice and his greatest source of pride. He often reminded himself that raising a good person was a more complex, lasting achievement than designing a winning engine. David lived by a simple, unwavering code. If he saw someone stranded, he stopped. He didn't differentiate between a rusted clunker and a 6-figure luxury sedan. He didn't ask for a deposit or credentials. He saw a problem that he possessed the unique skill to solve, and that was enough. His kindness was unconditional and anonymous. He never advertised, never hustled. He simply moved through the world, solving problems with quiet competence. Emma Lawson, 40, was the exact opposite. As the sharp, commanding CEO of a major tech investment conglomerate, she was accustomed to controlling every variable in her life: her schedule, her environment, and, most importantly, the people around her. Her black sedan was not just transportation, it was a pressurized, climate-controlled extension of her office. Its unexpected, total failure on a hot highway shoulder was her worst nightmare, a humiliating loss of control. It symbolized the chaos she had spent 2 decades meticulously trying to eliminate from her existence. Standing there, watching the clock tick past the scheduled start time of her most critical quarterly meeting, Emma felt a mounting sense of powerlessness she hadn't experienced since she was a struggling intern years ago. She had already tried 2 premium roadside services. Both had quoted a 2-hour wait. Her frustration was a physical weight. She was Emma Lawson, the woman who commanded markets and negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, yet she was powerless against a broken car sensor. When David stopped, she initially viewed him as another variable to manage. She was ready to negotiate, to pay an exorbitant fee for immediacy. But David bypassed the transaction entirely. He simply focused on the engine, a quiet, intense concentration that instantly calmed the frantic energy around her. He didn't look impressed by the car's price tag, nor intimidated by her expensive attire. He treated the complex machine with objective respect and her with detached, professional consideration. He was not swayed by her status or her panic. It was this very detachment, this refusal to acknowledge the corporate label that defined her to everyone else, that made Emma pause. Most people saw CEO Emma Lawson and reacted with deference or greed. David saw only a broken car and a person who needed help. He was the first person in years who had not asked who she was. And in that moment, as she watched the single dad quietly get to work, the unfamiliar sight of his worn hands against the polished engine block started to chip away at her CEO armor, revealing a long-forgotten memory underneath. The contrast between the simple integrity of David's life and the complexity of her own was a sudden, jarring revelation. David got straight to the root of the problem. His hands, though slightly rough from years of manual labor, moved with the surgical precision of an engineer. He bypassed the glossy dashboard diagnostics and went directly to the source. The issue wasn't the main engine, it was a subtle failure in the auxiliary power system. A simple temperature sensor, crucial for regulating the fuel-air mix in the extreme heat, had finally given out, likely due to prolonged vibration against the chassis. The car's complex computer system had, in turn, locked down the engine to prevent a total catastrophe. "It's the thermal relay sensor near the throttle body," David murmured, more to himself than to Emma. He explained that the high-end European design, while efficient, was notoriously sensitive to continuous temperature spikes common on the American highways. Emma, meanwhile, attempted a final, desperate maneuver of control. She pulled her second phone, the one reserved for her executive assistant, and began dictating commands. "Sarah, I need a replacement sensor procured and flown in from Munich immediately. Have it routed to the dealership closest to the 405. Coordinate with—" David stopped her mid-sentence, not with a command, but with a raised, oil-stained hand. "You'll waste half a day and thousands of dollars, Ms. Lawson. This is a common failure, even on this chassis. It's not a catastrophic failure. It's a system override due to false data." Leo, without being asked, retrieved a small, specialized toolkit from the truck. He was his father's shadow, having absorbed the rhythm of roadside mechanics through osmosis. "Is it the one we fixed on Mr. Green's old truck, Dad?" Leo asked, his voice bright and focused. "Different system, buddy," David replied gently. "But same principle. It's lying to the computer, telling it the engine's too hot so the engine stops talking back." He gave Leo a quick, warm smile, a moment of perfect, unspoken connection that was completely foreign to Emma's corporate world. She realized David had replaced the immense technical challenge of high-performance engineering with the immense personal challenge of parenthood, and he was succeeding beautifully at the latter. Emma watched, mesmerized. The easy, respectful dynamic between father and son was striking. David didn't talk down to Leo. He spoke to him as a valued apprentice. She realized with a sudden, sharp clarity that David was performing high-level troubleshooting, not just a tire change, and doing it with tools pulled from a rusty box, not a sterile service bay. The irony was devastating. She was a CEO of technology firms, yet her sophisticated machine was utterly defeated, and her rescue came from old-school, analog expertise. She noticed David pull out a length of specialized wire and a few small clips. He explained his temporary fix to her, his tone purely factual. "I can bypass the sensor circuit with this, just for the immediate function, forcing the ECU to use the backup temperature matrix. It's safe for city driving, but you need a full replacement at the dealership tonight. It will get you to your meeting." He explicitly rejected the expensive, immediate tow service she had been trying to arrange. "That's $200 for nothing. This is 5 minutes of my time." Emma was used to people taking advantage of her status. This man, covered in grease and refusing to charge her for saving her entire morning, broke every rule she knew. His refusal to accept payment felt less like a gesture and more like a statement of personal philosophy, a principled boundary that success could not cross. As he finished the temporary patch, cleaning his hands on a rag, Emma stepped forward, reaching into her elegant handbag. She pulled out a small wad of bills, far more than the task was worth. "I insist," she said, pushing the money toward him. "How much do I owe you? Please." David stepped back, shaking his head. His eyes met hers fully for the first time. They were warm, a shade of deep, familiar hazel, but guarded. "Nothing," he said, his voice flat and final. "Just drive safe. That's payment enough." Emma froze. The tone, the look in his eyes, the deep-seated integrity that refused the easy money. It all collided with a memory she hadn't accessed in over 20 years. A feeling of intense, almost painful recognition washed over her. She looked at the man's face, searching for a confirmation, but the signs of time, exhaustion, and experience had masked the youthful features. Yet the quality of his gaze, the quiet, uncompromising code of ethics, it was overwhelming. She felt her breath hitch, a moment of profound, confusing, emotional clarity amidst the midday heat and the roar of passing traffic. She realized she knew this man. She realized she had missed her own history. If you'd like to see how this moment unfolds, you're welcome to subscribe and continue with us. Emma lowered her hand, the bills crumpled in her palm. Her professional urgency, the critical board meeting, the financial stakes, vanished, replaced by a deep archaeological urgency to excavate her own past. She looked at David's hands again, stained with automotive oil, and instantly recalled a tiny, messy college garage filled with the scent of gasoline and cheap coffee. A handsome, focused young man spent countless hours there, fixing the beat-up cars of financially struggling students, often for free. The memory was vivid. The roar of a prototype engine, the smell of burnt rubber in David's profile, illuminated by the harsh overhead shop light, utterly absorbed in his craft. She remembered that time not just for the passion they shared, but for the profound, defining conflict that tore them apart. It wasn't just ambition, it was a specific, cruel choice. David, ever the purist, had turned down a lucrative apprenticeship with a major performance tuning house because they insisted on cutting corners on safety protocols for weight reduction. At the time, Emma, desperate for capital to launch her first tech startup idea, saw his refusal as a naive idealism, a lack of drive. She had called him reckless, not for the safety risk, but for turning down the money. They argued bitterly, their paths diverging violently right before her big internship offer came through. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady, forcing the question out as if it were an idle observation. Did you ever live near Riverside? The old Riverside Technical College campus? David, who was now closing the hood of her sedan, paused. It was a minuscule, nearly imperceptible halt in motion, lasting less than a second. But Emma saw it. The question had hit its mark. The memory, long dormant, surfaced in his own eyes, a flicker of the young, fierce idealist he used to be. He straightened up, his eyes now distant, pulled back in time. He answered calmly, attempting to brush it off. A long time ago, before the coast. Leo, proud to be part of the conversation, piped up, confirming the connection in the most innocent way. Dad used to fix everything back then, too. He told me he made race cars go fast. But he says fixing Mrs. Jenkins' lawnmower is more important than a Ferrari because she needs it to cut grass for work. Emma felt a dizzying pressure in her chest, as if her heart had seized. Race cars. That had been David's ultimate goal, high-performance engineering. His moral center, she realized, had remained absolutely constant, prioritizing utility and need over glory and profit. She looked again at the man's face, tracing the lines etched by time and sorrow that weren't there 20 years ago. The resemblance was too strong, the moral character identical. The years had hardened the face but strengthened the soul. But then she saw the final, undeniable proof, the tiny signature of their shared past. Just above his left eyebrow, partially concealed by a lock of his hair, was a faint, crescent-shaped scar, the result of a clumsy fall off a ladder in that college garage. She knew the story behind that scar. She had been the one to clean the wound, holding his head still while meticulously applying butterfly sutures, laughing at his stoicism. It was their private history, an indelible mark. The memories flooded back, the late nights studying together, the shared dreams of two ambitious young people, the intense, all-consuming connection they once shared. Their relationship had been a casualty of conflicting timelines, his relentless dedication to engineering ethics, and her urgent, laser-focused climb toward corporate power. The final, painful break had been abrupt, fueled by misunderstanding and the physical distance of her first high-stakes internship, leaving their story unfinished, unspoken, and buried under 2 decades of separate lives. Emma's perfectly controlled CEO persona evaporated. Her composure broke. She felt a profound wave of regret, not just for the lost love, but for the fundamental difference in values that caused the split. She saw now, standing next to his son, that David had chosen the right path. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper, thick with disbelief and the sudden weight of memory. "David?" David looked up instantly, her voice stripped of its corporate confidence and infused with that ancient, tender vulnerability, was the only thing that could have pierced the protective armor he had built around his heart. He looked at her closely, really looking past the designer suit and the diamond watch. He saw the fire in her eyes, the familiar intensity, the subtle, enduring curve of her cheek. He saw the young, driven woman he had once loved with reckless abandon. His own breath caught in his throat. His entire life, built on moving forward, had just slammed into his past. The sight of Emma, looking so impeccably successful, yet completely lost and vulnerable on the side of the road, was a paradox he had to accept. "Emma," he confirmed, the name a soft exhalation of acceptance and shock. "Emma Reed." The highway traffic roared around them, but in that moment, they were standing alone in a silent, suspended reality. The single dad, covered in grease, and the CEO, dressed in thousands of dollars of silken wool, were simply David and Emma again. The realization was electric, profound, and overwhelmingly awkward. Two ships sailing separate lives had unexpectedly collided on a highway shoulder, brought together by a faulty $50 sensor and an unwavering heart. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with 2 decades of unspoken history and the weight of 2 vastly different lives. Leo, sensing the strange, strained emotion between the 2 adults, instinctively moved closer to his father's leg. David, placing a protective hand on Leo's shoulder, was the first to regain his footing, grounding the dramatic moment back in the present reality. "Well," David said, his voice now entirely neutral, yet steady. "That's quite the coincidence, Emma Lawson. I saw your picture in a magazine cover a few years back. CEO of Argos Tech. Very impressive." His compliment was genuine, delivered without a hint of irony or resentment. Emma recoiled slightly at the mention of her current name and title, as if the corporate label was a costume she was suddenly ashamed to wear. "It was just Lawson back then. I looked for you, for years after I moved to the East Coast. I didn't know where you went after Riverside. David cut her off gently without malice, sensing her need to confess. "Life moved on, Emma. It happens." His eyes glanced down at Leo, a silent testament to the new path his life had taken. A path filled with deep loss, but profound love. He was confirming that his life was full, even without the race cars or the high-stakes engineering. "I lost Sarah 7 years ago. Leo was 2. After that, nothing mattered except this little guy. I needed work where I could be present, where a bad day didn't mean a corporate meltdown, but just a flat tire." Hearing the raw truth of his sacrifice brought tears to Emma's eyes. She realized the scale of the quiet suffering he endured, a pain so large it eclipsed their youthful misunderstanding. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered, the apology genuine and painful, encompassing everything. For how it ended, for the assumptions, for the silence. "I regret the things I said about your choice back then. I see now that your conviction was always your greatest strength." "There's nothing to apologize for," David insisted. "We were young. We both chose ambition, just different kinds. Your ambition led you here," he gestured to the sleek black car, "and mine led me to Leo." He watched Emma's face, ensuring she understood the depth of his current contentment. "No blame, Emma. Just different roads, but I wouldn't trade mine for anything." Leo, confused by the intense adult exchange, looked up at his father. David knelt down, placing his hand gently on his son's small back. "This is Emma, buddy. An old friend from when Dad was in college." Leo, accepting the explanation instantly, offered Emma a shy, friendly wave. Emma, seeing the quiet, fierce love between David and his son, understood the full scope of what she had lost. Not just a partner, but a man of irreplaceable moral fiber. The loss of her job, the missed meeting, none of it mattered compared to the loss of this connection. She realized this chance encounter wasn't a signal from the universe for them to rewind and reclaim the past. It was an opportunity for them to finally put it to rest, cleanly and with mutual respect. The silence of 20 years had created an open wound. This conversation was the necessary suture that finally allowed them both to heal from that youthful break. "You're right," Emma finally agreed, managing a faint, melancholic smile. "No blame, but I'm glad this happened. It gives me a chance to see that you're okay. You built a wonderful life, David. A real life." They stood there, two strangers who knew each other better than anyone else in the world, having successfully bridged the gap of 2 decades in less than 5 minutes. The moment wasn't for romance or regret. It was for the quiet, dignified acknowledgement that some loves are essential, even if they don't last, and that David's kindness remained utterly, beautifully intact. With the past acknowledged and the immediate future secured, David performed one final, meticulous check of the temporary bypass wire. He closed the hood of the luxury sedan, the metallic thunk sounding final and authoritative. Her car was fixed, but the problem in their history had also been addressed. Emma knew she couldn't simply drive away. She owed David more than a financial transaction. She owed him the time that was stolen by their past. She hesitated, then offered, "David, Leo, I know I've wasted your morning. Please let me buy you both lunch. Nothing fancy, just a diner down the road. Not as a CEO paying a mechanic, as Emma asking an old friend for 20 minutes. David looked down at Leo, who had already given his silent approval with a hopeful gaze. He knew this gesture was about closing the loop, not opening a new one. "All right, Emma," he conceded. "Lunch, but I'm still paying for the tip." Old habits. Oh no. They drove a short distance to a local, slightly worn roadside diner, a setting far more suited to David's world than Emma's usual clientele lunches. They settled into a cracked vinyl booth, the air conditioning struggling against the afternoon heat. Sitting across from him, sipping a weak iced tea, Emma felt the rigid tension in her shoulders slowly dissipate. She kept her phone in her bag, refusing to check the meeting status. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She didn't talk about her company's market share, her investments, or her corporate life. Instead, she asked about David's mobile mechanic business, his passion for vintage cars, and most importantly, about Leo's dreams and favorite sports. She saw the true, unwavering joy in David's eyes when he spoke about his son, a pure, simple happiness that her own success had never managed to deliver. She saw the man she had loved, matured by life, and made even better by fatherhood. The conversation flowed easily, marked by a deep, shared history that transcended the intervening years. Emma talked about the isolation of the corporate summit, the constant pressure, and the realization that the view from the top was often empty. David talked about the profound, grounding reality of a child's needs, the kind of simple human urgency that put all quarterly reports into perspective. Emma had a powerful realization. For 20 years, she had believed she was right to choose the path of money and power, viewing David's ethical decision as a weakness. Now sitting across from David and Leo, she saw it wasn't weakness, it was strength. He had prioritized parenthood over personal ambition. He had walked away from fame and fortune just so he could pick up his son from school every afternoon. That was a magnificent pivot, and it created a man far more at peace and rock solid than any CEO she knew. "You know," Emma said, setting her iced tea glass down, "I used to think that if we ever met again, I'd try to help you, give you business advice, maybe invest in a new shop. But I see now your life is as perfect as it needs to be. You don't need my help. You have real wealth, the kind money can't buy." She glanced at Leo, who was intensely drawing on a paper placemat. "That boy is your greatest project." David smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that softened the weary lines around his eyes. "I won't deny I miss the sound of an engine and the feeling of speed, Emma. But I've learned that what I'm fixing now matters more. I'm fixing things that are broken for people who actually need it, and I'm building something lasting with my son. That's meaning." They had reached a deep understanding, a silent apology for youthful mistakes and a mutual respect for each other's adult paths. Much like David had fixed the faulty temperature sensor, They had removed the emotional confusion causing a system failure in their hearts, allowing both to move forward with clarity. As they prepared to leave, the silence was comfortable, healed. Emma didn't try to hire him, date him, or fix his life with her money. She simply reached out a hand. "David," she said softly, "I know you need your space, and I respect that. But I'd really like to keep in touch. Not to interfere. Just to know you're still out there. I owe you more than just this small repair." David met her gaze, his expression warm and accepting. He took her hand, shaking it gently, a gesture of friendship and respect, not romance. He finally gave her something she could hold on to without compromising his life. "We can do that, Emma. My number is on the magnet on your engine hood, next to the bypass wire. Drive safe." Leo beamed. He had not only seen his dad fix a broken engine, but he had watched him fix an old broken heart too. Emma watched the old pickup truck drive away, carrying the two most valuable people she had met that day. She knew their relationship could not return to what it was. But the quiet certainty that David was living a life of profound integrity, anchored by the son he cherished, was the truest form of closure she could have ever asked for. As she drove, heading toward her meeting, she felt lighter, carrying not just the memory of a lost love, but the renewed confidence that she could still recognize the true value of integrity in a world obsessed with false glamour. Some connections don't fade, they wait, not for a second chance, but for the right moment to deliver the missing pieces of a life well lived. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. Some connections don't fade, they wait.